Hey everybody, I'm Jason, and this is Jay's Project Garage. So you saw in that little clip, I got the 5-liter broke free, some PB Blaster and a big old giant ratchet and some time, and I got it broke loose. Kind of needed to anyway to be able to get all the pistons and everything out. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm sure the lighting's bad and I'm a moron. But all of these rings are completely stuck. When you pull the piston out, they kind of spring back. These didn't. I pulled 3 of the rods and pistons out because they were easy to get to, and then I just kept messing with it, and I got it broke loose. And the cylinder walls, they're not pitted. They look pretty decent. There's just a real faint ridge around the top, so it definitely needs to be bored, but I think it'll clean up fine at 30 over. But we're gonna run a dial bore gauge down through it and see what the taper is and see how bad it is and make sure before we ever take it to the machine shop. Otherwise, maybe we can just take the block that's already 30 over and it's pretty much ready to go. It's already got new freeze plugs and cam bearings, and that's what the crank rods and pistons and everything already came out of, so it'd be super simple to throw it back together if you guys want me to put it in the 91. I did get one comment that said, hey, let's throw this thing together as an HO and put it in the 91 just so we can drive it, and that may still be an option with this, or we can save this for some other project, or whatever. But today I'm working on the 69, and I'll bring you guys along and we'll see what we can get into. So this is what I was planning on working on last weekend, or last Sunday, but I went up doing stuff for the kids instead. I was outside, it was freezing cold, I was a popsicle. And then Saturday, when it snowed, I went and got 2 trailer loads of, actually wound up being almost 3 trailer loads of firewood. And I was tired. It was a long weekend, but I'm going on the 69. I'm getting the rear end out, and I'll show you what's going on with it. So the rear end's out, and now we got the leaf springs. I just usually cut the U-bolts. I don't even mess with them. I've got new ones anyway, but we're replacing the springs and the U-bolts, and we're going to put new axle bearings and seals and a traction lock differential in that, and it's getting disc brakes, so it had to come out regardless. And I've got a little bit more rust repair I've got to do. Can you see that? And it's kind of the same thing over on the other side. Once I get that fixed, that's the last of the rust repair on this car. And then I just got to go through and clean up the whole bottom side and get it ready to put primer on, and then we'll undercoat it when it comes back from paint. That way, if we get a little bit of we're going to mask off the bottom side of this car, but when I'm getting a little bit of overspray on it, it's no big deal. I'll just have to go back and I'll use a Scotch-Brite and I'll rescuff the whole bottom of the car, and then we'll undercoat it. And then I think we're going to do some kind of a sound deadener, heat barrier stuff on the inside. I'm not 100% sure yet. I found some stuff that was fairly reasonably priced. Had great reviews, kind of like lizard skin. But I don't know, we'll try it out. I'm going to show you what I got going on with these leaf springs. This is a really common issue with a lot of cars. There's a rubber bushing right here in the leaf spring, and there's a steel sleeve that goes through it that the bolt slides through. The problem is the bolt rusts to the sleeve and you can't get it to turn. So I'm going to have to go through the Sawzall and cut these bolts off to get these leaf springs out. It sucks, but I've had to do that almost every single old Mustang that I've had to work on. It's just one of the joys of living in the Rust Belt, I guess. I've had problems on newer cars with control arms and stuff, especially in the rear, because they've always been made that way. There's a rubber bushing that's got a steel sleeve that goes through it, that the bolt goes through. That steel sleeve serves a couple different purposes, but the length dictates how tight the bolt gets or how much the bushing gets smashed. So it's kind of a necessary evil. I just wish that they'd use some kind of an anti-seize or something on it when they were putting them together, but they don't care about the guy that has to work on it later. I do have a surprise for you guys. The unobtainium lower hinges, finally, after months, I finally got them. So now I can actually go through and I get these doors, gaps and everything set, and just from looking at them, they are rough. I mean, the contour of the back isn't anywhere close to being right, and it's not right at the front fender, so we're gonna have to go through and we're gonna have to weld on the edge and grind it to set our gap. I see a lot of guys on TV that are like building stuff out of mud, and I don't like doing that. And I've talked about it in other videos where all it's going to do is create a problem for you. You pull your car into the garage, the door swings open. Oops, I just bumped into the wife's car and knocked the whole edge off my door. So now my wife's pissed and my car's messed up. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do it the right way. Or as right as it can be anyway. Okay, so normally what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll just cut the leaf spring. And I'll take my ratchet and I'll spin it out of the way. That way I got plenty of access. On this side, I just grabbed an angle grinder. It'll fit in there perfectly. This side's a little bit trickier. You can cut some of it, but then you'll have to go through the Sawzall and cut the rest. Back in the day, I used to just take a torch and cut these things and burn the bushing out and cut the bolts. I got a scar on my arm to remind myself why I don't do that anymore. Hot rubber's no joke, so make sure you guys are careful. Wear a pair of gloves. You don't want this stuff on your hands or your arms. It's like hot wax or anything else. If you get it on you and you try to rub it off, it smears it, and then the burn winds up being even worse. So just be careful. And make sure when you're cutting these things to wear some kind of safety glasses or something, because there's shit flying everywhere. But you're never going to believe this. I had to cut the driver's side, but the passenger side, somebody call Ripley's. Unbelievable. It's the exact opposite of the way it usually is. Normally, the right side of a car is the worst, and the driver's side is not as bad. And I've talked about it in other videos because of the crown on the road and crap collecting on the sides and salt and everything else. This is exciting. Now, me cutting the bolt is no big deal because we're putting subframe connectors under this car, and they have their own bolts that go through the front of the spring. It ties the rear torque box in with the new underfloor supports we put in. So this is just a hell of a conversation piece, really. You guys will never guess. Pretty cool. I think now I'm gonna get the rest of the old exhaust hangers and brake lines and fuel lines and all that stuff out of my way, so I can really get a good look at the few areas that I know are still gonna need a little bit of repair. Okay, here's a good one for you guys. Marketplace, you got a 9-inch rear end advertised, so you're going to look at it and you're trying to figure out if it's actually a 9-inch. If you can get to all of these nuts with a ratchet and a socket, then it ain't a 9-inch, it's an 8-inch. I don't know if you can tell, but those bottom two on a 9-inch, you can't get to it any other way than with a wrench. So just watch out for that. And there's a couple different 9 inches too, and we'll cover that in other episodes. The gist of it is the tube diameter is going to be different on some of them. There's a big bearing and a small bearing. Big block cars had a big bearing. Trucks had a big bearing. Big body cars had big bearing. Smaller cars, small blocks. 351 and up had 9-inch rear ends, and they would use the smaller bearing. Don't ask me why they did that. I'm sure it had something to do with loading, especially in trucks. I don't really understand why they used the big bearing in big block cars, other than the axle diameter was a little bit bigger because they were 31 spline. This is a 390, which is yes is a big block, but it actually has 28 spline and the smaller diameter axle tubes, which is strange to me. I mean, it's a 390 4-barrel 4-speed, make a ton of torque. It's an oddity. It's just one of those things. One more thing. 65.6 V8 cars were all 8-inch, except the Hypo 289 and the Shelby. They had a 9-inch rear end with an even smaller diameter axle tube. And those things they didn't make very many of them, obviously, but those things are mega high dollar. Now, you can buy an aftermarket housing with any tube diameter you want. So if you've got a 65 or 6 and you want to put a 9-inch in it, and you want to order one from Curie or Moser or somebody like that, then you can get the smaller diameter tubes. But as far as Ford's concerned, the only ones that had the small 65/6 diameter tube, 9 inches, were the Hypo 289s and the Shelbys. So watch out for that. And a real quick way to know if it's a big bearing or a small bearing, if you see that step, if you see that step, it's a small bearing. If there is no step and this tube is the same diameter all the way out to the backing plate, then it's a big bearing. Okay, so I went through and I got all the old brake lines and fuel lines and everything off, and I saved all the original clamps that I could. I'm 99% sure that I'm going with the newer style that has the rubber in them, because cars going down the road, hitting bumps, things vibrate. The newer style clamps are easier on the line. They're less likely to like rub through or whatever. But when I was pulling the exhaust hangers off, I kind of reminded me that I needed to tell you guys. These are original Ford exhaust hangers. And these plates go through the floor pretty close to where the inner seat belts would bolt. So if you have a car that has those holes there or has these brackets, then you know your car was originally dual exhaust. If it only has one, then it wasn't. This is kind of an earmark of the GT cars. There's a few ways you can tell, but one of them was they would have factory dual exhaust like this. And these are the newer style clamps I was talking about. Let me get the glare off of it so I don't look like a moron. See how it has rubber in it? It isolates the line from the body. So even if it does move around a little bit, you don't have to worry about it being metal on metal and wearing on it at all, because the last thing you want is a hole in a brake line. At least me anyway. I don't want a hole in any line. It's bad. When I'm trying to outrun a fireball or not having brakes. You know what I mean? I think that's probably it for today. Tomorrow I've got a bunch of stuff I got to do. I'm trying to get stuff finished up for the kids because it's cold. Chickens aren't happy about being outside, and I don't want them in my shop. So far, I'm winning the battle. But I got a bunch of stuff I gotta get finished up. I'm not gonna be able to do a whole lot next weekend because it's Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the States, anyway. You guys in Australia and stuff, eat some turkey. Next weekend on Wednesday, it's kind of a weird situation. Wife kind of sprung it on me a month ago. I mean, I've known about it, but it's still kind of a weird situation. We've got to jump in the Explorer on Wednesday at about 3 o'clock, and we've got to drive all the way to Springfield, Missouri. It's like 6.5 hours. And then Thursday, we're having Thanksgiving dinner with my wife's parents. I'll get more into the family and where they live and where they used to live and all that kind of stuff in another video, but we're going to Springfield, Missouri. We're having Thanksgiving dinner with them. Friday morning, we're jumping back in the Explorer and we're driving back home because we're not taking the kids with us. And we're doing Thanksgiving dinner here on Saturday. So it's going to be, honestly, it's going to be kind of nice to have 4 days where I'm not working on stuff nonstop. I'm not going to lie. Other than the 13 hours of driving. And the weather looks like it's going to be decent. It's according to the forecast, it's supposed to be in the 50s. That's way better than the 17 it was this morning when I woke up. So that's it. The next video is probably going to be right back on the 69 again. Drop some comments and let me know what your thoughts are on this 302. And then, you know, I'm cleaning up the bottom side. I got a few rust spots I still have to fix, and we're gonna get it all in primer. We got a little bit of body work left to finish. We're gonna get everything in primer, then we're gonna start seam sealing. I'm gonna build a cart for this thing so we can move it, so I can leave all the suspension and everything off, because I would much rather put it all back on and not have it covered in overspray. So I'm going against what I originally said, because honestly it just makes more sense. And it'll get it out of the workshop so that I can start detailing all the front suspension. I can get the engine taken apart and checked out and put back together. I can get the rear end all cleaned up and rebuilt, and I'll show you guys how we're going to do all that stuff. Put a traction lock in it, and like I said, seals and bearings and all that crap. But we've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm going to be honestly, I'm going to be really happy when the 69 is done and gone and out of my hair and the house is done. That's going to free me up to do anything I want, anytime I want out here in the shop, and we can go nuts. So egg me on. I need some motivation to try to get this stuff finished up so we can get on to our projects. Frank, one more thought. If you're still watching this mess, I have never tuned for elevation. I know the basics, and I know the higher in elevation you go, the more likely you are to be running rich. So the bog kind of has me puzzled, and I'm still going back to timing. You need to get your timing right. That's the very first thing I do, is make sure the timing is right before I do any more tuning on the carburetor or anything else. And at 5,000 feet, you're going to have to go down on jet and metering rod. At least that's what common sense tells me. But like I said, every combination of situations is different. So hopefully I've been of some help. I'm not the end all be all. I can't just rattle stuff off. But I know enough, and I know what I'm doing to where I can do it. I just have a hard time sometimes explaining it, if that makes any sense at all. I have to be able to see it to make a call. But that's it. So you guys get out in the shop and you work on your projects. You have a great day and Thanksgiving, and I will see you in the next video, which probably won't be for 2 weeks.